By now, I'm sure all of you have seen the reveal trailer for Pokemon Sword and Shield, and if you haven't, I implore you go watch it right now before watching the rest of this video. That's because now, more than ever, we have to ask ourselves this question about last year's Pokemon games. Are Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee still worth it in 2019? Especially when we know the 8th generation is coming and at least have a vague idea of what that generation will look like. For starters, if you really hate Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, this video isn't really going to change your mind. I'm not here to do that. Nor am I here to tell people to not buy and enjoy these titles. However, this is me reaching out to all of you new Switch owners out there. Maybe you recently picked up the Switch and you're on the fence with these titles. Maybe you passed on them the first time, fearing the worst, but after seeing more gameplay, you're wondering if you might enjoy them. Also, it's entirely possible you are just like me to a T. Someone who fell out of love with the Pokemon series some time ago, and you're wondering if these Gen 1 remakes are exactly what you need to get back into the series. And do the Pokemon Go mechanics crap all over the experience? Look, let's first not pretend that these games are anything more than what they are. They are Generation 1 remakes of Red and Blue, with a new story that have all of the quips from the first generation, including being limited to the original 151 Pokemon. All NPCs are stuck on a grid-like pattern. You collect 8 badges, you beat the Elite Four, and everything that was there from Gen 1 is there, and it's expected to be there, including the Pokemon follow mechanic from Pokemon Yellow, except this time around, not only will Pikachu or Eevee follow you, but you can pick any Pokemon to follow you in addition to. That's neat. There's also flying and riding on the backs of Pokemon, and some things that we have seen in newer Pokemon games, but not a lot. I mean, heck, we're still exploring the SS Anne again, and that has never been more... Okay, so it's actually the exact same as it was the last time you explored SS Anne. The point is, this is probably one of the purest remakes Game Freak has done to date. Unlike prior remakes, this is quite literally Gen 1 with a new coat of paint. There is no egg hatching to be found here, and conversely no breeding, there are no Z moves, and oddly enough, Mega Evolutions actually made it in. But basically everything else that has advanced since the first generation is gone. This is basically Generation 1 with HD visuals created on the Nintendo 3DS Pokemon engine. That isn't to say there aren't some radical changes. The first one you'll probably notice is that your rival doesn't hate you, but instead he's actually your best friend. This is more of a plot point change than anything, and as I said, this is a new story. After that, the biggest change is in how Pokemon are actually captured. I am sure you know how this works by now, but as a quick refresher, you throw Pokeballs, literally, and that's basically it. You can make the Pokemon easier to catch by feeding them berries and other types of fruit, and then timing your throw just right to get an excellent throw rather than a bad throw. This is exactly how it works in the free-to-play mobile game Pokemon Go, though the crazy spin throw you can do in that game isn't present for you Go veterans out there. The other major changes we have literally never seen in a Pokemon game before is basically that wild Pokemon are now visible in the overworld. This means that random encounters are dead. Personally, this was an enthralling change and actually made the entire experience for me worthwhile. But for many out there, if you prefer a more traditional experience, I certainly can't fault you. When capturing these Pokemon, you have 3 options depending on how you're playing. The option marketed the most is actually playing with the Pokeball Plus accessory, which will run you an extra $50, and it only works with Let's Go. It's a simplistic controller that not only gives you access to Mew, the real reason anyone probably picked it up, but it's shaped and looks like a Pokeball. It's honestly a bit small for my hands, and I did experience cramping over time. There are, however, 2 really interesting features that just didn't feel the same with any other control method. The first is the HD Rumble. While it's present in the Joy-Cons, reality is the Pokeball it acts far more like what you see on screen, with the sort of rumble you would expect with a Pokeball, and how it kind of moves around after seeing if your Pokemon is going to be captured. You guys all know that dun-dun. Yeah, it's not essential, but it does engross you more into the experience. The second thing about the controller is it's designed to literally be thrown. Yes, there is a wrist strap, but also a finger strap. So when you throw the Pokeball Plus and throw a Pokeball in the game, you actually throw the controller. And with the finger strap, you can just quick wrist flick it, and the controller comes right back to your hand. It's almost like a yo-yo in that sense. It's an interesting experience, and if you have the controller, I implore you to try it out a little. The second way you can play the game is just with a standard Joy-Con. The game is played entirely with just one of these, and it only works properly in tabletop mode and docked mode. I use the right one for my experience because I'm right-handed, but it was an adjustment getting used to moving my character with the right thumb versus my left. But you do get used to it. Otherwise, the game plays exactly like it did with the Pokeball Plus, though I don't suggest you go around throwing your Joy-Con, as it just doesn't have the same feel and is not designed for such things. HD Rumble is pleasant, but hardly noticeable here compared to what normal Rumble feels like. One unique feature of using a single Joy-Con, however, is co-op. It is not something I found myself using frequently, and I literally have no footage of it due to a hard drive failure. More on that later. But it was nice having my kids or my fiance pick up the other Joy-Con and join me. They use your Pokemon, can freely move their own character around on the screen, and battling other trainers is really easy, as it's 2v1. However, capturing Pokemon can be a little bit more troublesome, as you both need to time your throws together. The last method to play, and the one I think many will be using, is simply standard controls in handheld mode. Why this control method isn't available with the Pro Controller in docked mode is beyond me, but basically the only motion involved is the slight movement of the system to center a Pokemon on the screen. Otherwise, it's just a button press to throw the ball, and it makes timing inherently much easier, as there are less moving parts to screw up. The Pro Controller has these same gyro controls, so I'm a bit baffled why this is the only way to get this control scheme. After you beat the game, there are Master Trainer battles, and I found them to be a little repetitive. Again, no footage here, but basically you beat 151 Master Trainers in the game to gain their titles. You must battle with them with the exact same Pokemon they use, and your Pokemon should be around level 75. That's a lot of grinding out levels, but in my honest opinion, it is well worth it. There are lots of other tweaks to the game and changes you just have to accept. You won't be bringing in Pokemon from the Pokemon Bank, only Pokemon Go. And there is currently no way to back up your save file in case something happens, which is par for the course for Pokemon, but still a bit of a bummer in 2019. I get that hackers are a real thing, but let's be real, cheaters are going to cheat. I shouldn't have to risk losing my 100 plus Master Trainer titles and most of my Pokemon because of it. Okay, I digress. The real question is, if knowing all of this and playing of it what I played, should you get it in 2019? Is it worth it? Well, I cannot tell you what you should do. What I can say is that for me, is that I really enjoyed the experience. And it did at least give me a spark back for the Pokemon franchise I haven't had in a long time. Enough for me to give the next generation Pokemon game a shot. This game isn't for everyone, but it is for me. And while many will argue until they are blue in the face that it's just a casual dumbing down of the series, I think once you finally play it for a while, you will come to appreciate the game's approach to the series and find it's not nearly as bad as you feared. In fact, you may even end up liking it. At least, that's what I got when Generation 8 was showed off with Wild Encounters again, and many were clamoring for Pokemon to be in the overworld once again. That being said, what is clear is that Generation 8 isn't replacing Pokemon Let's Go. Their approaches seem to be fundamentally different, which in turn makes Let's Go still worth it in 2019. Now, why am I not reviewing this title after months of promising it and just doing this video? Well, let's talk about that. So poor lighting aside, I've been promising a review of this game for months. I've been working on a review of it ever since the games came out in November, and it was one of the most in-depth reviews I had ever worked on. The review itself was going to end up being about 35 minutes long based on the last timestamp I saw. It featured, I had well over 20 hours worth of footage. I had I even did some stuff in After Effects to try to spice it up a little bit. I brought in a second person to help frame some thoughts around this. So basically, there was me, and then the review is also going to come from the perspective of like a veteran of the series. So basically, my perspective was, what do I feel like it, from someone who hasn't really played Pokemon games in 15 years versus someone who's played every single game, right? Like I wanted to bring in multiple perspectives of this, and so there was a mini discussion in there as well. Not necessarily a podcast like thing, but kind of here's all my thoughts, and then let's bring in a Pokemon veteran, get his thoughts, and then we come to a final conclusion on it all with a score on our Reggie head scale. And man, I put a lot of time in. I probably had, this is just me guessing. I don't have access anymore, but probably 150 hours of editing. I was probably about a day or two away from being done with it and rendering out the file. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to render out the review one time before I did anything else, because I wanted to make sure that it was going to be what I wanted it to be. Because, yeah, you can watch it in the video preview window, but for those who don't know, I'm using like an i7-6700K CPU, and when you're doing a lot of intense editing, when you're throwing After Effects and all this stuff in, even when you pre-render scenes, sometimes it just really slows down and lags. And I wanted to see what, with all the time I put in, I wanted to see what this product looked like before I completely finalized it, put on the outro and all that stuff. So I hit render, and it told me it was going to be about 3.5 hours on the render. I expected that. There was a lot of effects going on. Cool. So I let it run overnight. Came back the next day. My computer was blue screened. Didn't think much of it at the time. I had the project saved, of course. And so I didn't think much of it. I've had this blue screen problem happen a bunch of times. Got my computer back up. I had a drive failure. I did a lot of different recovery methods. I did what I said I would never do, and I took my hard drive into a data recovery place that overcharges you just so I can get my Pokemon stuff back. Because basically I have my save file, all my video files, and everything on a single hard drive. And and it also included like all my old game footage too, right? So everything was on that hard drive. And basically they said they would have to send it in to a place that does individual plate recovery, because it was a spinning disc one, and you have to go in and have to like replace the head and a few other things in there, and it's very, very delicate process. And they told me it would run me anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000. I'm obviously not spending $5,000 to $10,000 just to recover a game review. So bottom line is, I didn't record any more footage. I don't even think I played the game since that happened. And it was very hard to put together this more condensed, rushed version of what I was going to do, because ultimately there was no way in heck I was going to get my time back. I wasn't going to bother the second person who was helping me to get them to spend their time doing stuff again. And I definitely wasn't going to start a new save file all over again just so it could take me another 4 or 5 months from now to get this video out. And I don't know, when was I going to launch it? The same day that Pokemon Sword and Shield comes out, when nobody cares? It's already at the point now that probably most people don't care about this video and didn't even get to this part. So I just want to say I'm sorry about this. I learned a valuable lesson. It's something that I've always known, and I've known for a while as a tech head. You need backups of everything, especially critical data like this on a project you're working on. I did not have backups. Now I have a second computer. All of my files are backed up, so they're on 2 completely different drives. I also, for mission critical stuff, save certain things to the cloud. So if I'm working on a more long view video that's going to take me a month or 2, I back up a lot of that in the cloud as well on my Google Drive. So now I've got 3 different places that it's backed up. So it would take something crazy for me to lose access to all of that. But I apologize. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next one.